Welcome to my kitchen. I'm Dr. Donald DeFabio and the Doctor's in the Kitchen. Today we're going to be talking about seafood. Why? Because we just looked at all of our family traditions for Christmas Eve. And in our house, that's the 7 fishes. And we were talking about it and how wonderful they are. And yes, oftentimes those are meals we save for Christmas Eve, but you can have them anytime. So today I want to share with you 2 of my father's recipes for Christmas Eve. And we've been using these recipes as long as I can remember. And we continue the tradition. If you go to my YouTube channel, you can actually see our whole Christmas Eve table in a 2-minute slideshow. It's really pretty cool. So stay tuned, because over time we're going to share all of our family recipes with you. So here we go. Today it's going to be Pops, baked Bakala, and Zoupa the Clams. So the first thing we want to talk about today is Bakala. That's going to be the first dish. People make it lots of different ways. But again, this is Pops baked Bakala. So before we go into the preparation of it, the one thing you need to know about Bakala is it's salted codfish. But salted fish comes lots of different ways. Lots of different fish are salted and preserved. So let's take a moment and talk about that, because I had to buy the Bakala 2 days ago to be prepared for today. I couldn't just go to the fishmonger today and buy the fresh Bakala, because Bakala is salted cod and you have to prepare it. So watch this short video on how I picked out my Bakala and how you can pick out your Bakala so it is super fine and tasty. Let's take a moment to talk about Bakala and choosing your Bakala. Now I have here a piece of gorgeous, beautiful Bakala, and it's codfish that's been salted. However, if you go to an ethnic store and you just ask for Bakala, there's lots of salted fish. Traditionally it's codfish. Traditionally I like the deboned cod, and this is a whole fillet. What do you look for in your Bakala? First of all, you look for a nice even color like this, all right? Not too brown, it should be lightly white, off-white, and consistent. You also want the fillet. This is really the part we're interested in eating, right in through the middle, okay? You want that relatively consistent in size and thickness for a couple of reasons. It'll help with cooking, and it'll also help with soaking. You also want this a majority of the fillet. Now, if you know your fishmonger really well, you could ask him to cut this piece off, because this piece is really good for like the cat. It's a little bit tougher. It's the belly of the fish. So it is edible, but it's just not the finest part of your Bakala. So that's what you look for. It's okay to have a little skin on it, but look at that gorgeous color. Really, really fabulous. So you put your Bakala down on your cutting board, and the first thing I'm going to do is, and it'll salt all over the place, I'm going to trim off the tail here, the belly. Alright? I will save it, I will cook it. Alright? I'll use that in like a salad or something like that. Alright? So I'm just going to put that over here for now. However, for the baked Bakala that we make, now I cut this into portion-sized pieces that are going to cook evenly. So I have to think about the thickness as well as the width, as well as soak evenly, because I want it soaked and prepped. So this is a little thicker, so I'm going to go a tad shorter. That's a nice little piece. And I use a nice sharp knife for that. This is a perfect size right about here. 2.5, 3 inches is the size we like. About 2.5, 3 inches. It's kind of like cutting a filet mignon in consistent sized pieces. Now we're getting near the tail. It's a little bit thinner. So these are going to be a little bit wider, so they cook and soak evenly. So from here, I'll run them under running water, get off the excess salt, and then leave them in a pot, plain old stew pot with cold water, and I change it all the time. As much as you can change it, the quicker the salt comes out. I soak my Bakala for 24 to 36 hours, and just keep changing the water. It's osmosis. The more fresh water, the more salt comes out of the Bakala. And then you're ready to cook. So that's Bakala 101. Bakala is really excellent but it does take that preparation time. This is how the cod looks now that it's been soaking for 2 days, all right? That works well for me. I change the water as often as I can. Before I go to work in the morning, as soon as I come home at night, and then again before bedtime. I do leave it in the refrigerator. If it was wintertime and it wasn't freezing, I would leave it on the back porch or in the garage. But it's got to be kept cold. You don't want to cook it. And look how lovely that looks. Isn't that gorgeous? Look at the color. Now the skin is going to go in the pan down. All right, and these are the pieces we were talking about. They're all evenly thick. They're all going to cook evenly, which is nice. So they'll all cook at the same pace. And you arrange them in the pan. This one's a little bit thinner by the tail, but oh, gorgeous piece of bakala. And these are those little tiny pieces that it's the belly. Again, the cat would love them if you have a cat. If you don't have a cat, you can still cook them, all right? But they would go good in a salad because you can chop them up and you don't notice that the body isn't as good. So that fits enough into this pan. So I'll just put this away. So the bakala is in a pan. You see what I'm saying about the belly? It's got that flesh on both sides. I'm not going to use that piece. Let's see if there's another piece I can pull out. Yeah, this is a better belly piece. There's only skin on one side, okay? Again, edible, but not the highest quality. In the pan, this is going to bake. Let's add 1/4 cup of white wine. On top of the white wine, just a touch of olive oil. Maybe 1 to 2 tablespoons, all right? You got it. While you have the olive oil out, put about a tablespoon in your pan because we're going to need that. This is a very sweet dish. Everything in here is very sweet. But the first thing you do is just roll that bakala around, almost basting it in the white wine and olive oil. Let those flavors start to get absorbed into the bakala. So again, if you like your bakala a little on the salty side, don't soak it as much. But the more you change the water, whether it's you soak it a day or you soak it 3 days, the quicker the salt's going to come out. I will not be adding salt to this dish because it's already salted. So let's get our heat on. So on top of this, we're going to add some sauteed onions. So let's heat up a little bit of oil. Now, onions are also sweet. So the whole dish is very sweet. You take a Spanish onion and slice it in straight down the middle in circles. And they want to be, oh gosh, almost 1/4 inch thick. You want a little body to them, all right? So you get them in your pan with a touch of olive oil, and you cook them till they get translucent. You don't want to caramelize them, but you want them cooked. You know, the cod's been cured in salt, so it's once you take the salt out, it doesn't need much cooking to be edible. All right. In fact, ceviche and sushi is raw fish, so it's actually almost ready to eat by itself. So this we partially cook. The only thing we're going to put in here on top of that is uncooked are some chopped tomatoes. So let's sweat these down a little bit, wait till they get translucent, and then we'll put them on top of the bakala and start seasoning. So as you can see, the onions are wilted, just barely caramelizing, no more than that. That's because I was a little distracted. I don't like to get too much caramelization, but this, just sauteing them like this brings out the sweetness. So let's shut these off. Those are perfect. Now, bakala, just been letting it baste in the white wine and garlic while it's waiting. Sprinkle just a little oregano, not heavy on the oregano. A little bit of oregano over your bakala. Again, doesn't need salt. Sometimes we'll add a little black pepper, but frankly, it's all about the sweetness. So take your sauteed onions and put a couple of onions on each piece of fish. All right, just a couple onions over the top. Oh boy, you can smell the aroma, the sweetness of the onions, how it just comes right out when you saute them like this. So for what I bought one whole fillet of Bakala, as you noticed. It was just under 3 pounds, about 2.5 pounds. I'm going to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about 8 servings out of it. 1 large Spanish onion is going to do you in terms of how much onion, okay? And that's it, a little bit of onion. That oil with the onion, put it right in over the top. Again, it's all about sweetness, this dish. Next, take some raisins. And just a couple over each piece of fish. Get in there. Again, it's all sweet, sweet, sweet. A couple of raisins on each one. We're going to follow that with some chopped tomatoes. San Marzano, again, a sweeter Italian tomato, chopped. So it's not a puree. It's not a thick, tomato paste. They're just chopped tomatoes. And again, San Marzano is sweet. So does it have to be San Marzano? No, it doesn't. And just a light coating. You're not cooking them in tomato gravy or sauce, all right? Just a light coating. So it's maybe a tablespoon, if that, on each piece of fish. It's just a little bit. So you have the onions, you have the tomatoes, you have the raisins, and it's all going to marry together nicely. Then I just take a little bit of the tomato and I put it in with the red wine and white wine so we get some of that tomato flavor coming up through the bottom of the fish as well. All right, so there we go. It's almost ready. The last thing we need to do, again, just kind of mix everything around just a little so the flavors cooperate. It's not a sauce. It's baked bakala. It's not bakala and sauce. And then we're going to sprinkle some breadcrumbs over the top. Again, light. It's not about breadcrumbs. It's not about tomato. It's not about raisins. It's about bakala. It's about the cod. And these things just bring the flavor out. And this really also helps to create a little body to the top so the juices stay together. All right, now this is going to go in the oven, 325, approximately 30 minutes. And you can leave it uncovered. And then all the flavors will blend together. Halfway through, baste it to get all of those fluids on top into the breadcrumbs so we can really get all of this luscious flavor right into the breadcrumbs like that, okay? So you're going to want to baste it just like that about halfway through, all right? We'll get the process started, get those breadcrumbs a little moist. So 325, half hour, keep an eye on it, baste it halfway through. Now, I want to talk about breadcrumbs. My patients know I'm an anti-inflammatory guy. I don't eat a lot of grains, so this is a little treat. But one thing I noticed the other day is I wanted some seasoned breadcrumbs. So I started to look at the labels. Even plain breadcrumbs in the store are full of chemicals, full of preservatives. They can stay in your cupboard for years and not go bad. How long can you leave bread out before it gets moldy? And I made the connection. So make your own breadcrumbs, guys, if you want to use breadcrumbs. It's really easy. Buy some good artisan preferably French or Italian bread. If you can get organic grain, that's great, because you don't want grain that's produced with Roundup and harvested with Roundup, all right? That's a whole nother story, but one of the reasons we're so sensitive to grains right now is because in the United States, they spray the fields of wheat with Roundup so they all mature at the same time, so then it can be harvested together. So we're eating pesticides when we're eating traditionally grown wheat and wheat products. That's why so many people are gluten sensitive and so many people's guts are banged up because of that. So find a baker that uses organic flours and get an artisan organic bread. Eat what you can or just let it dry. Grind it up in your blender with a little bit of Italian spices. Now you can just buy Italian spice mix, or you can make it your own. Garlic powder, parsley, rosemary, oregano, basil, salt, pepper. That's it. Put it in your blender, blend it up, taste it, add whatever you like till it gets the way you like it, and then keep it in the refrigerator. Because if you leave it out, it's going to go bad. Leave it in the refrigerator and it'll stay. Homemade breadcrumbs, healthy choice. So that's our first meal. I'm going to slide this off to the side, and we're going to get started on our second meal, Zoupa the Clams. The original recipe came from La Grotto Azzurro, and now this is Pop's version. Let's do Pop's Zoupa the Clams. I'm going to turn the pan on first. Add a little bit of olive oil in the bottom of the pan. Oh gosh, maybe about 2 tablespoons, just enough to coat the bottom of the pan, not too much, all right? And then it's going to get some garlic, 2 cloves of garlic. Right now we're doing 24 little neck clams. Now let's talk about clams. In fact, while this is cooking, we're going to have a little clam tutorial because it's really important that you get the right clam for your dish. For this dish, we want the tiny ones. We want the little necks, okay? These are great on the half shell. They're sweet, they're succulent, eating them raw. In fact, I'm gonna save this one because it's perfect and we're gonna have it raw. But the sizes start tiny like this, okay? And then they build to medium, gets a little bit bigger, and then they go larger, gets a little bit bigger. Now we're getting into cherry stones, and then they get all the way up in here, your large cherry stones. You know, also called maybe chowder clams, but cherry stones. Chowder clams could also be steamers or long necks. But the bottom line is these are not going to work for Zoupa the Clams. You can, these are very large. You can open them up, take the meat out, chop it up, and use it in like a linguine with clams. That works well. You can take a half a dozen of these. You'll get a lot of clam meat, chop it up, a lot of clam juice, and it'd be great with linguine and clams. But you can also use a smaller one. You just need more volume. So oil is cooking. Garlic's not brown, almost ready. And then I put my clams over here. I don't know why I put them over there, but here are my clams, 2 dozen of the little necks, okay? Really beautiful clams. So we're going to put them right in. Top of that, where's my lid? We're going to add half a cup of white wine. Cover it, okay? And the heat should be medium high. Let it go, all right? It's hot in the studio. It's hot in the kitchen. A moment ago, these guys were starting to open. And you go, oh, that clam's open. Oh, it's a bad clam. This guy here was opening. Not necessarily, all right? How do you tell if a clam is fresh, if it's edible? Is that you knock it together. Hear that? Sounds like 2 balls that are billiard balls, right? Hard, solid, not hollow. hard, solid, not hollow. Same thing. But if you get a hollow sound, and frankly, I didn't get one bad clam in my bunch, all right? You can't eat that clam, even if it's closed. Throw it out. That means it's dead. So that's the way you can tell whether your clams are right. All of these clams have to be checked before you put them in here. You put one bad, dead clam in here, it's going to ruin the whole dish. All right? So let those guys cook. All right? Now, in terms of clams on the half shell, in terms of clams on the so in terms of clams on the half shell, you can eat them raw, and you want the little tiny cherry stones. Those are the most flavorful. Get your clamming knife. Now, if you're going to be opening up clams, let's see if we get lucky. They need to be cold. When they're cold, they open up so much better. See, this has been out in the studio, in the kitchen, not so cold. Doesn't want to open, all right? Maybe I can catch it, maybe I can't. There it goes. So I'm going to open it in through here. And there's a technique where you can get this little film to stay on top like that. Scoop out the bottom so it doesn't lock in. And you can eat it plain, you can put lemon on it, horseradish, whatever you want. But now wow, that's great. So if you, clams, they're from the ocean. It's seafood. They're salty. This dish is not going to need much salt, and it's going to throw off a lot of fluid. The other thing you got to know about clams, they're living. If I were to take these clams, put them in a plastic Ziploc baggie, and put them in the refrigerator, they're going to die. They have to breathe, all right? They don't have to be in water. They don't have to be on ice. I'm all fogged up, all right? But they have to breathe, all right? So very important. Now, they haven't opened up yet. We're going to let them keep cooking. But we're going to add some flavor to that. The flavor we're going to add right now is going to add a big old spoon of marinara sauce. Now, this is already cooked. It's garlic, San Marzano tomatoes, sauteed down and cooked. I could put this right over pasta if I wanted. We're going to put one tablespoon, just one big spoon of that in there because it's not a tomato sauce. We just want a little tomato flavor. We also need to add some oregano. We're going to add approximately a quarter of a teaspoon. Let's stir this around. Keep the heat relatively high and let it go, okay? Let me check my heat. Yeah, it's looking good, okay? So we're gonna let that cook. While that's cooking, we're gonna garnish it with a little bit of fresh parsley when it comes out, so I'll chop up the parsley. Now, traditionally, we eat this in our house with just bread. So we're going to be serving it with some really good Italian bread. We'll cut it on the bias, and that's it. Can you serve it over pasta and make it a main course? Of course you can. But we're going to, we use it more as an appetizer, all right? And frankly, Christmas Eve, our main course does come with pasta. That'll be lobster fra diavolo, lobster with linguine and a red sauce. Boy, that's to die for. Let's chop this up a little bit because a little bit of fresh parsley is the garnish, gives it a nice little flavor. If you like a little heat in your clams, you can add a little red pepper, all right? But it's the flavor of the clams. It's about the seafood, all right? So there aren't a lot of additional spices in here. And there they go. The clams are starting to open. And that's the other misnomer. Oh, if you cook a clam and it doesn't open, it's no good. No. No, you can't assume, no. Bottom line is, that's incorrect. The clams need to be checked before they're cooked. If the clams are okay when you cook them, they're okay when they're cooked. Just because they don't open, that doesn't mean anything, okay? The best way to get them to open is to take them cold and put them into a hot, pan. Then they open the best. This is almost done. Doesn't take long at all. Clams are just about all open. That's really what I look for. You don't need to cook them too much. And if you notice, the sauce is very, very light. It's not a tomato sauce. It's just a very, very light sauce. And it's all about the flavor of the clam, and it's less about the flavor of the tomatoes. All right? Spoon that out. Ah, it's gorgeous, gorgeous. All right, a little bit of parsley over the top. Great. Some nice artisanal, organic Italian bread. Put it in there. Let's get the flavor of the sauce. Oh man, that's great. Pop, you'd be proud. The clam, you can slurp it, or you can just take your little fork and it comes right out. And there you go. So, Zoupa the Clams, easy, light, refreshing, a great appetizer or primo. Serving suggestions could be over pasta or even with polenta. So, let's put this up in the front. We'll chow down on that in a minute, but let's check that bakala. It should be just about done. And let's move this. And there's the bakala. Wow, that looks great. Oh, smells beautiful. We could do a little bit of parsley on top, and it's good to go. So you just take it, scoop it up right on here. And the way it's prepared, everybody gets a little bit of the onion, everybody gets a little bit of the raisin. If you want, you can put a little more basting on top. But since we basted it while it's cooking, all of this lovely flavor is already in the top. And yeah, you're ready to roll. So let's see how the bakala came out. I want to get a little bit of the onion and the meat and the tail. Great. Sweet, light, also refreshing. You know, the bakala takes on a whole different character when it's dried. You can do this same dish with fresh codfish, but the body is different. It's much lighter. The flavors don't get absorbed. When the cod gets dehydrated and then we rehydrate it and flavor it, it changes the whole flavor and texture of the fish. So check it out. Give it a shot. So there you are. Pop's Baked Bakala, Zoupa the Clams, two of our family traditions for Christmas we're sharing with you. I'm Dr. Donald DeFabio. Thanks for coming to my kitchen. Have a great day.